glad you're still watching Science Breakfast with me, Alan Hubbard. Sign language interpreter is Gideon Minor. Now, these are the stories that are making headlines in the country, and we are starting it off with no retreat, no surrender. Azimio leader Raila Odinga has announced more anti-government protests this Wednesday, defending the action as a constitutional right to picket. Odinga criticized the Ruto administration for failing to address issues affecting Kenyans, including the high cost of living, and instead instituting punitive taxation measures that is placing a huge burden on the people. Odinga said the after lighting up with the internet with his trip to the Nairobi Central District aboard a public service vehicle.
Leo tuliamua kuhisi vile wananchi wa kawaida wanahisi kila siku. Wakaniambia mafuta ndio hiyo, kodi ya nyumba ndio hiyo, karo ya shule, haya yote. Kwa hivyo imekuwa adimu sana. Wakaniambia mimi wamechoka.
Tunataka siku ya Jumatano mjitokeze kwa wingi, tufanye maandamano ya amani.
Sasa tutasanya masahihi milioni 15 ya kutoa imani kwa serikali bandia ya Ruto na Gachagua. Mko tayari kuweka sahihi?
You say we have 20 million registered voters.
Yes.
About 14 million voted.
Yes.
And Chebukati alleged, which is not true, that 7 million voted for William Ruto. Mm-hmm. So we need a higher threshold than that, than his support, what they say to have been his support base.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10 million should just be enough.
Sisi majambazi. Sisi vile si watu ambao wanataka ugomvi kwa sababu ya ugomvi. Tunafanya kila kitu, tunafanya na sababu. Tumesema Wakenya wana sababu. Pili, Wakenya wana nia. Tatu, Wakenya wana uwezo ya kuleta mabadiliko. Let us deny Ruto the fuel tax by limiting consumption of petrol and diesel. One way to do this is to carpool. Let us arrange to make regular journeys in a single vehicle whenever possible. Kama maisha imepanda, tuliambia Ruto usiongeze mzigo zaidi. Punda imechoka. Amekataa kusikia. Mambo ya finance bill mpaka itolewe, sio? Wakaniambia unga 250. Sukari karibu 500. Wakaniambia mafuta ndio hiyo, kodi ya nyumba ndio hiyo, karo ya shule, haya yote. Kwa hivyo imekuwa adimu sana. Wakaniambia mimi wamechoka. Mmechoka, sitarudi nyuma. Sasa tumesema siku ya Jumatano. Mko tayari?
And away from that, now to CS Kithure Kindiki warns Azimio protesters against violence and destruction of property. Now, Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki has warned Azimio protesters against violence and destruction of property. Kindiki told those planning Wednesday's mass action that the police will use force to deal firmly with those out to disrupt peace and cause mayhem.
Kulikuwa na watu wa siasa wamefanya kile waliita maandamano. Tumepoteza watu 6 ambao wameuawa katika sehemu nyingi katika Kenya, eti walikuwa wakiandamana. Tuko na maofisa wa polisi pia ambao waliumizwa na mawe na vifaa butu ambao walipigwa nao na wananchi ambao walikuwa wanasema wanaandamana. Those extreme ideas that when you disagree on a political issue, you cause mayhem, you hurt people, you close businesses, you close public highways, you uproot, facilities. That culture must stop. And we are going to deal with you very firmly, decisively, and with finality.
The tendency by the police to be misused
to arrest people for no reason, to tear gas people for no reason, to tear gas advocates like a very senior and renowned advocate, Dr. Haminwa, you saw when he appeared at Central Police Station, he was tear gassed.
Tutakubali tena katika mchanga wa Kenya maandamano ya kuvuruga watu, kuua watu na kuharibu biashara za watu. We will not allow. We will not allow. Kuna watu wamesema story nyingi kule. Sijui vile watafanya Jumatano. Mkuje asubuhi tukutane. Kujeni tukutane. Because hii nchi sio yenu peke yao, ni ya kila mtu. Hata wale hawako kwa maandamano ni nchi yao. Hata wewe ni nchi yenu. Kwani nchi ni yako peke yako?
Police are supposed to be independent. When we wrote the Constitution, we ensured that the police was no longer a force, and we changed the name from a force to a service. It is becoming clear that the police have not just gone back to be a force. They have gone back to be a puppet force.
Lodging a complaint is guaranteed by our Constitution, and we should be able to stick by our Constitution because it is the Constitution that makes us what we are as Kenyans.
Sisi tulikuwa tunafanya maandamano ya amani. Wengine pia walishikwa kama wafanyi maandamano, walikuwa kazi yao. Mimi Kenya nataka ni unga irudi chini, bei ya maisha ikue chini, ama next hivi bado nitarudi tu hapa Central.
Kuna kipengele hata moja inasema uende ukaokote sahihi ndivyo uweze kutoa serikali kwa ofisi.
Wakati wanafanya maandamano, wenye wanaumizwa ni sisi wana Nairobi. Wenye wanaumizwa mabiashara zao ni sisi wana Nairobi. Na imefika mahali sisi wana Nairobi nasi tunasema enough is enough.
And away from that story now to political parties. Dispute Tribunal confirms Kanini Kega as Jubilee Party Secretary General. Now the political party's Dispute Tribunal has confirmed Kanini Kega as Jubilee Party Secretary General while upholding the decision by the party's National Executive Committee to suspend Jeremiah Kioni, David Murathe and Kagwe Gichohe.
Ama kufuatilia uamuzi huo ni kwamba Mheshimiwa Kioni sio mwanachama wa chama cha Jubilee, Mheshimiwa Murathe sio mwanachama wa chama cha Jubilee, na Mheshimiwa Gichohi amewekwa kando kwa miaka miwili. Ya pili niseme kwamba sisi kama wanachama na viongozi wa Jubilee tutahakikisha kwamba tumewahusisha members wetu katika zile taratibu zote ambazo zinafanywa. Kinyume na hapo awali ambako kulikuwa ni watu wachache tu, watu wachache sana walikuwa wanahusishwa katika mambo ya chama.
And away from matters Jubilee Party now to IGAD heads of state urge unconditional ceasefire in Sudan. Now the IGAD quartet heads of state and the government have implored parties involved in the Sudan conflict to declare an unconditional ceasefire to facilitate the commencement of the final phase of the political process to end the conflict. President William Ruto, who met the concerned heads of state under the IGAD quartet in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, said they were alarmed by the spiraling humanitarian crisis, which had since seen more than 2.9 million people displaced and claimed 2,000 lives.
I believe this approach reinforces the search for peace and will allow progress that lays a firm foundation for a peaceful and stable Sudan. The atrocities in Darfur are alarming. The targeted interracial attacks are particularly concerning as they steadily spiral into a humanitarian catastrophe. Our meeting must address this unfolding situation. Our meeting needs to pave way for an unconditional ceasefire that facilitates unhindered humanitarian access and ensures protection of civilians, stops loss of life, destruction of property and critical infrastructure, and enables the people of Sudan to access public services. And I recommend as follows. Track 1, establishment of safe humanitarian corridors. 2, mediation between the leadership of SAF and RSF so that we can stop the war. And number 3, commencing all-inclusive dialogue aimed at restoring Sudan to democratic governance. Given the negative effects of the crisis on the ground throughout the Horn, the Red Sea and the Sahel, humanitarian assistance should also be extended to the neighboring nations with a particular focus on the vulnerable groups, including women, children, and people living with disability. The situation, ladies and gentlemen, in Sudan is grave. As the conflict continues unabated, we are witness to its devastating impact on the people, on Sudan, and on the region. We are witness to its devastating impact on the people, on Sudan, and on the region. To date, the number of displaced individuals have surpassed the 2.9 million. More than 2.2 million people are internally displaced, while over 640,000 have sought refuge in neighboring countries. I appreciate efforts made by the IGAD heads of state and government, both collectively and individually, as well as our partners, notably the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for standing in solidarity with the people of Sudan during this crisis.
The consequence of a protracted conflict in the Sudan will be grave for neighboring countries. The Horn of Africa is still coping from the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, from repeated droughts and climate change-induced problems, as well as from the effects of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The conflict is set to further fuel the threat of terrorism within the region by thriving on the weakening governance and security system of the Sudan.
We cannot fail in this endeavor. I therefore look forward to our engagement providing a roadmap towards a lasting and sustainable peace in Sudan.
And away from Addis Ababa, now to High Court declines to lift suspension of Finance Act 2023. Now, High Court Judge Mugure Thande has declined to set aside suspending the Finance Act 2023. The judge ruled that the petitioners have proved that they have a case, adding that if the orders were to be lifted, the public stands to suffer. Quote, the petitioners have proved that they have a prima facie case. There is merit in granting conservatory orders, the judge noted. The judge further directed that the file be forwarded to Chief Justice Martha Koome to appoint a 3-judge bench who will hear and determine the matter. Further, while declining to delve into the merits of the case, the judge noted that if the orders are not reserved, then there is danger in rendering the case as nugatory and an academic exercise. Similarly, the judge said that lifting the conservatory orders will be against the public, as there will be a real risk of the public being subjected to unconstitutional laws that have been challenged. In the case, Busia Senator Okiya Mtata and others moved to court to challenge the Finance Act 2023, saying it was unconstitutional. The state, through the AG's lawyers led by Githu Muigai, wanted the orders granted 2 weeks ago lifted. Away from that, we take a break.